Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of the Know to Prevent virtual speaker series for 2022 and 23. As you're coming in this evening, I want to ask you to just open up the chat and let us know for Dr. Borba's benefit as she's getting ready to present and speak with you tonight. And we're so excited to have her here with us from California. So thank you for being here. We just want to know, just by poll in the chat, ages of your children, if you are a parent or a guardian or caregiver of children, the ages of your children, high school, middle school, college, elementary school, just so Dr. Borba has a sense of who's in our virtual space tonight. That will be helpful to her as she's presenting. We're also going to ask you to get ready for the presentation by just grabbing a plain piece of paper and a pencil or a pen for an activity that's going to get started. And if you can put that information in the chat, that would be great. Although it does look like we might have one reply in the Q&A. So Kathy's going to keep an eye on that. So Know to Prevent is a collaboration of youth-focused coalitions and agencies in Westchester working together to provide parents and caregivers with the essential tools to increase resilience and to reduce risky behaviors among our youth. For more information on the collaborative and upcoming presentations, as well as recordings of previous presentations, you can visit us at knowtoprevent.org. My name is Nancy Pasquale. I'm the coalition coordinator for RIACT. RIACT is a coalition of local organizations and individuals committed to promoting long-term health and wellness by inspiring youth, parents, and community leaders to foster healthy behaviors and reduce youth substance use. We are pleased to be a presenting sponsor of Know to Prevent. I'm joined today by my partner in all good things prevention, Kathy Cucciarella. Kathy is the chairperson and DFC coordinator for the Somers Partners in Prevention. Kathy's going to be helping out this evening with when we get to the Q&A section. So just a few reminders about how tonight will work. Tonight's presentation is being recorded and participants will receive a link to the recording along with a handout called the tip jar. The tip jar highlights key takeaways, information, and prompts from tonight's speaker for you to have as a reference. Dr. Borba has also provided us with a variety of great resources that you will get in addition to the tip jar. So just be on the lookout for those in your email when the recording comes. We'll be answering questions toward the end of the presentation. If any questions about clarification come up, Kathy or myself will let Dr. Borba know that there's a question around clarification.
Okay.
But otherwise, we're going to let Dr. Borba speak and present. And Kathy, do you have a question now?
Yes, many of our folks coming in on the chat are stating that the chat's disabled, so they're unable to respond. I did get a few that came in the beginning, but then the rest are saying the chat is disabled.
Interesting. I'm not sure why that would be disabled, and I'm not sure if I can correct it now that we're midstream. It looks like the Q&A is working properly. Is that right? So maybe we'll use the Q&A for this purpose. So if you can just respond in the Q&A, and sorry to hear that the chat is not working, not sure why that's happening. And thanks for letting me know, Kathy. Yes. But we also want to let you know that as Dr. Borba is presenting, if you think about questions that you would like to ask, we have a few that came in prior to the presentation that we will be asking, but please do feel free to put questions in the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring that throughout so that we can ask questions for clarification during presentation if needed, but otherwise we'll hold questions to the end for that Q&A period. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker for this evening. And Kathy, do you have a sense from what's coming in the Q&A about ages of kids? Are you seeing what's What's happening in there?
Yes, so the majority that are coming in are high school age, so some are coming in there, and we have a few in college, and a few as young as age 8.
So a big mix. And we do know we always have lots of our fellow coalition leaders and prevention folks who are also in the room as well. So we just want to reassure you that we'll be answering some questions for you. And we have a few questions that Dr. DeBorba will be answering specifically for you all as well. So Dr. Borba is well known for her warm, down-to-earth speaking style, as she is for cutting-edge insights. Her informative presentations leave audiences with usable strategies, something we always love at K.N.O.W. to Prevent. A sought-after motivational speaker, she has spoken in 19 countries on 5 continents and served as a consultant to hundreds of schools and corporations. Clients have included the likes of Sesame Street, Harvard, the U.S. Air Force Academy, 18 U.S. Army bases in Europe and the Asian Pacific. His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. I liked seeing that one. And a TEDx talk called Empathy is a Verb. She offers realistic, research-based evidence, advice called from a career working with over 1 million parents and educators worldwide. She is an NBC contributor who has appeared 150 times on the Today Show and countless other shows, including 3 Dateline specials, Dr. Phil, The View, NBC Nightly News, The Doctors, Anderson Cooper, NBC Education Nation specials. I'm getting tired just reading all the things.
So am I. Thanks.
And her work is featured in numerous publications as well. She is the award-winning author of 25 books translated into 19 languages, including her newest book, Thrivers, and Unselfie, Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in an All About Me World. Awards and recognitions are numerous, including a National Educator Award presented by the National Council of Self-Esteem, the National Child Safety Award of 2016 by Child Safety Network. She was named a consultant for the character education and civic engagement for the U.S. Department of Education, a Disney influencer, and Goodwill ambassador for MIT's One Laptop Per Child project. Her proposal ending school violence and bullying, SB 1667, was signed into California law in 2002. Dr. Borba is a former classroom and special education teacher with a wide range of teaching experience, including work in private practice with children with learning and emotional disabilities. She received her doctorate in educational psychology and counseling from the University of San Francisco, an MA in learning disabilities, and a BA from the University of Santa Clara. And she lives in Palm Springs, California with her husband and is herself the mom of 3 grown sons. Dr. Borba, we are going to go off camera now. We're going to turn it over to you. Welcome and thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you. I got tired listening to myself in my career, but thank you for that introduction. Listen, the only thing that really makes me credible to you all is I'm a proud mom of 3 boys. Therefore, it goes by so quickly, folks, and I am so honored to be here this evening with you. I just wish I were there in person. What I really want to do is share with you what we can do to raise up strong kids, prevent the issues that are happening with our children, reduce that mental health issues, and give them to really a new start. I think if there's anything that we've learned from the pandemic, parents, it's that we really need to reimagine a bit of our parenting. And the reason for it is we're not going to stop loving them. We're not going to stop being firm and fair and everything wonderful about it. But we're also going to keep in mind that we're raising our kids in a different generation. It's more uncertain. It's more fear-based. It's more accelerated. But that's okay. We got this. So here's what I'd love you to do is take out a piece of paper. You're going to need it in just a little bit because the most important thing for tonight is let's get a roadmap. I'm going to give you practical, proven things that research says we can do to help our kids thrive. Thrive is a kid who keeps on going the full 9 yards and doesn't need the rescue of us in the end. But I also think we need to keep in mind the reason why. This is the latest that I've just pulled from the CDC. We're looking at the American Medical Association, and they're concerned, as we are, that during this last 2 years, we've seen a rise in mental health, depression, suicidology that's been unprecedented, particularly amongst our teens. But you know what, parents? It started prior to the pandemic. I started writing Thrivers and started interviewing kids across the country because I was seeing it as a 1 in 5 trend. We're now at 1 in 3. A pandemic only amplifies a pre-existing issue. The second thing, let's keep this in mind, is that we can make a difference. And I think the most important thing we need to do is take 2 seconds and look at the evidence that says we make a difference in raising resilient kids, and it's not locked into DNA and GPA and zip code. And it's not, unfortunately, in most of our parenting books. None of the ones that I wrote made back when, but I began to look at, when I saw this problem, some of the best science that I think is being overlooked. People like Emmy Warner, this incredible researcher from the University of California at Berkeley, who had the same question as us. Is there hope for kids who are overcoming extreme adversity? We're not just talking the kids who have gone through a pandemic, but also kids in war zones, poverty, sexual abuse. How are they doing? Also, Ann Manston, she looked at kids who were homeless. Norm Gormese, who looked at kids whose parents were schizophrenic. Or Michael Rudder, kids growing up in extreme poverty. These are longitudinal studies who all reach the same conclusion. Studies that looked at kids, for instance, Emmy Warner, for 40 years. What happens to these kids when they grow up? She was already blown away by what happens to them when they become teens. If parents do the things we're talking about tonight, give them new tools, give them a sense of what I call agency. That child says, I got this, Mom. I can do this. I'm not saying stop helping them in that school, get those grades, but I'm also saying weave in some other strategies along the way. We're going to reduce the mental health. We're going to reduce that always intervention, and we're going to be more preventative in our strategies. With that in mind, your next question is, so what do I teach? What do I weave in? And it seems that there's 7 things that matter most. From all the research I just quoted, 7 strengths keep coming up over and over again. Here's the most important. These are universal. I've worked on 19 countries all over the world and 5 continents. Same strengths matter. I've worked in different zip codes from upper to lower and all in between. I've worked with different ages, and it makes no difference. You can start this at 2 and keep on going. If you're worried about your spouse, it's not too late for them either. So here's a little roadmap. And here's what I want you to do with the paper, and it's all going to come together, and then we're going to get really practical. The first thing I'd love you to do is take the piece of paper and just fold it into 8 squares. Don't worry what it looks like. This is just your little note taking for the next hour, because I want you to write down what works for you, what your family needs, what your kids need, because it's different for everyone. That family, stop comparing yourself to them. Those kids are different. DNA matters in terms of temperament. It matters in terms of a little bit in terms of their natural nature. What we're going to do is figure out which skills they need to be the best they can be as human beings. Now number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The last one's a star. That's going to be the single most important thing you want to try tonight, tomorrow, or next week. But please, I'm going to give you practical, simple things. But in the end, what you're trying to do, parent, is teach your kids these habits so they can do them without you. They can do them when they go off to college. They can do them when they have their own relationships. What we've got to do is help our children learn to take these habits that are healthy ones and be able to use them any place and any time. Real quick, and then we'll go into depth on each one. The 7 most highly correlated strengths. First is self-confidence, knowing who you are. Second is empathy. It's a we kid, not a me kid, who has social competence. Third is self-control, the ability to regulate those emotions so you can put the brakes on them and that stress doesn't keep building and building and building so your cognitive abilities go. Fourth is integrity. That's you planted inside your kid. What values do you want to see in your child? That's so critical. And we'll look at that tonight. The next one, 5, is curiosity. One of the highest correlations of resilient kids is they think outside the box. When push comes to shove, they go to plan B. They're problem solvers. They're not Albert Einsteins. These are just kids who go, that's okay, I can go the next step. Then comes perseverance, the one we all want. We're looking at, why isn't he more motivated? You're going to see in a minute that some of these traits also blend together. Self-control is highly correlated to perseverance. They amplify each other, but that's the child who doesn't give up until finally 7 is optimism. I've got hope for the future, and I've got to be able to keep that pessimism down so I don't feel helpless. I feel like I can keep on going. Now, one other little thing about this, there's no window of when you shut this down and it's too late to teach them. Number 2, I know you're all going, oh my gosh, do I have to teach all 7? No, it's a rare grown-up that has all 7. But these are the traits that we now know are the key to preventative, they're key to well-being, and they're ones that are easy to teach. So let's get going, because one other little thing, I just heard that the majority of you are dealing with a high school child. I just dealt with 2,500 mental health counselors in Ivy League schools. And they said the number one thing that they're discovering is that the kids are lacking these. As a result, they're feeling empty. Parent, the number one time that your child is most likely to drop out of school their entire life prior to the pandemic was the end of freshman year, first semester of college. They come back. And the reason they come back is not because of their GPA. They already had that to get there. They come back because they lack these skills. A little bit of, let's do it. Number 1, you ready? Self-confidence. Put it on there, because this is the core strength that seems to be the foundation. And it really means that children who thrive know what their strengths are. They can accept their weaknesses. They don't need trophies and gold stars in order to get through. But from a very early age, we now know that one of the really strong correlations to all the science of kids who are healthier and do healthy habits along their way is they also have healthy hobbies. What's your child do when push comes to shove or he needs to cope? The healthy hobby also helps him decompress. And now's the time to help introduce those healthy hobbies. And here's some reasons why. First, we do know that when you grow up and you get the job in the real world, you're far more likely to, says Gallup, in interviewing thousands and millions of productive people out there in the real world. You're happier in a flow state. You're happier when you're engaged in what you care about, what you are good at. That's critical. The second thing that's correlation to all of this is that our most talented teens in the United States of America, we track them, give up their talent around the age of 13 because they don't have time to devote to it. I'm not saying that your job is to raise a Nobel Peace Prize or Olympic athlete, but your job is to help your child find what he can use to nurture who he is, not what you want him to become. So here's your first job, real simple little task. And maybe that's what you write down. Here comes the how-tos in number 1. Maybe take a 3x5 card just over the next couple of weeks without your kids knowing. And it's going to be a different card for each child. I got 3 kids. They're as different as night and day. It's Russian roulette and what you get on the terms of the temperament. But keep looking out for your child. When is he a little more tenacious? When is his attention a little more focused? When does he learn a little easier? When is he more eager, or he needs that particular go-to habit? Or you can hear the tone in his voice when it's time for soccer or it's time for the art club. He just gets excited about it. During COVID, maybe the soccer camp stopped and you could really see a little bit of, oh gosh, now what am I going to do? Because he craved it. The first thing is find it. And please don't worry if you can't discover it. You just look a little closer. If he doesn't have a healthy hobby, healthy one, that's going to be good choices, then you can start introducing them. Or you can network with some other moms or dads who have kids who are similar to your child's age, and you can start introducing them. Maybe yoga. Maybe Natalie, age 14. She goes to Dalton in New York. I asked her, Natalie, what are you doing during COVID in order to decompress? She said, I listened to Mozart. I said, Natalie, how'd you figure out it was Mozart? She said, my mom was crafty. What she started doing is playing music over the loudspeaker in our house. And every time she'd put on Mozart, I started to calm down. It really helps me. It helps me learn. I listen to it when I'm doing my work, and I go to it when I'm really a little bit stressed. I said, fabulous, Natalie. She puts it on her iPad. That's what you do. You find the healthy one. Now, part 2, I said, Natalie, what happens when you do something really good? She says, I got that one covered. It's Elton John. I'm still standing. So step 1 is the research is clear. Find what really your child needs and help him develop it. Later on after this, your email is going to come to you. And if you're really going, I can't think of anything, don't worry. You're going to get a survey of 150 strengths. You're going to look at it and you're going to go, I've been overlooking that one. You're just going to take some time and figure out who your child is. That's such a gold mine, parent. And once you do, start valuing your child for who they are. Let your child know that a strength is who you are. That's what you really seem to gravitate towards. Have you noticed how you really are eager for it? Start with littler guys using the word because in your praise. Praise is great, but they don't need it all the time, and they don't need scratch and sniff stickers all the time either. But they do need to know what you think is valuable about them. And that is, every time you find it, I just discovered how artistic you are because of the color combinations you use, or I discovered how fabulous you are in terms of music. You really have great pitch because every time there's a song on, you immediately go to it and your voice goes right at the right level. Because can be critical. Earshot praise is really fun too. And that is kind of crafty again. Your spouse comes home and you've discovered a strength about your child. And I'm not saying you do this all the time, but every once in a while you discover a legitimate strength. Wow, you say to your spouse with your child eavesdropping, not you thinking he's there, pretend he's not. You can't believe how artistic our kid is. He's absolutely amazing. And he seems to just love it so much. It quadruples it. Finally, carve in the time. Take a moment, look at your calendar. Is there time for your child to be able to really nurture that strength? Or I'm talking just a few minutes a day. What Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton say, the kids who seem to cope better when they go off to college have that strength and they go to it. In a club, they gravitate towards finding other kids who also have the same strength. And as a result, they have a way to shine. So there you go. Find your child's just core asset. Take a moment to look at it. Maybe do it as a family together. And if your child is struggling in school or has a learning disability, realize that it's a fabulous opportunity for your child to also shine. One of the greatest studies of Cradles of Eminence, they looked at 700 of the most highly gifted and talented individuals in our century, and they discovered that 1/4 of them would have been in a special education classroom. Severe learning disabilities. What helped them cope? What helped them shine? The parent who found and nurtured that strength of the child. Number 1, what's the strength? What's their go-to? That's the first thing. Make sure it's who your child is and not what you want them to become. One story on that one. I interviewed a dad who was a little concerned about his middle school child. His son, he said, I want him to go into law. That's what I am. And I think he'd be great in law. My older kid, he's into technology. That's where he's going. But the problem with my middle school kid is all he talks about is wolves. I mean, that's a little concerning, right? I mean, he seems like he's always talking about wolves and dreaming about wolves. It got to the point where I was concerned, but I decided to set up a little bit of a go-to with the park ranger. I had him go and talk to the park ranger as he's walking around the park, and I sat there with my mouth open. I couldn't believe how engaged he was talking about wolves, how politely he was correcting the park ranger for the wrong stats about wolves. And it was my moment to say, wrong, Dad, you're wrong. Your child is a kid who should be in biology. Forget the law. That's who he naturally is. Who's your child? Be the talent scout. There's where you go. Number 2, it's empathy. See, it isn't one trait. It's many. It's 7 in particular. They don't need them all, but maybe the go-to thing that you can do as you're writing your roadmap today is to say, I got this one covered, but maybe this is what my child needs to shine. We discovered this one, for instance, empathy. It's the ability to feel with other people. It's the ability to connect with other people. And we discovered how critical it was during COVID. We saw a loneliness epidemic that was unprecedented for grown-ups as well as kids. And now our kids are telling me that one of the things they worry about the most is that they can't connect as well as they used to. They can't read each other like they used to. And they're first to admit we've been looking at screens the whole time. Now, first of all, they are digital natives, that's for sure. But the second thing is they've also had masks on for a couple of years. They haven't been exercising their social skills, and that's the gateway to empathy. So let's just look at a couple of ideas and let's look at it. First of all, there's 3 kinds of empathy. One kind is the child that you've got in your home that watches Bambi. He's the affective kind. You can just see his whole face get distressed when somebody else is in pain. He doesn't come out of his room for a week and a half after Bambi. That's affective empathy. That's the easiest kind of empathy to see. But there's also cognitive. Do you know that Harvard now says this cognitive empathy is the top employability factor? Being able to step into somebody else's shoes. And you can see that in your child. For some kids, that be my middle kid, would be the one to watch news. And you could see him get a little more solemn because he was actually stepping into the shoes of the hurricane victims. I always told him, and I'll tell any other child, you never have to agree with what the person is coming from, but try to understand. If we can help our kid try to step in and understand the other person's point of view, that's a gold mine for today's children. And then the final thing is best stress reducer there is. If you feel it and you understand it, so what can you do about it? That's behavior or compassion in action. I see our generation of kids doing extraordinary things. The Parkland High School kids just marching for gun safety after a horrific school shooting. If there's something that really impacts your child, they're worried about climate change. Many teens are. They're worried about homelessness. Then you ask them, so what do you want to do about it, sweetie? You don't have to go off into the world. You can start in your own community. Let's look at some other ideas because there's lots of possibilities. One of the things that we've got to do, and our kids are telling us we need to do a lot more, is talk feelings, just naturally talk feelings. And the reason for it is, parents, sit up. The gateway to empathy is being able to say, she looks upset, or he sounds frustrated, or look how his shoulders are stepping. Man, he looks really upset. That's empathy. I want you to be really clear on this one, because Yale is saying we do a far better job of this with our 2-year-old daughters than we do with our 2-year-old sons. So it doesn't need that it's 6 o'clock. We're going to be talking feelings. Just do it naturally. Talk about it with your child around the dinner hour. When you're watching Inside Out as the movie, when you're watching any show, wow, look at their face. How would you feel? Our kids are saying that they are not able to read each other as well as they used to. So maybe that's a possibility. And then you can ask the question as they get older, how would you feel? How do you think he feels, or what does he need, or what can you do? Those questions are gold mines, says Martin Hoffman. There's so many simple things we can do, parents, to help. The other thing is, I think we also have to do something that's clear, set some digital limits. Our children are digital natives, and all of the work after COVID is saying they became more and more addicted to those screens. Now, there's some positives about it. I'm not saying that. But I am saying watch out, because maybe the key question, parent, is not what your kid is plugging into, but what he's plugging out of. If it's face-to-face communication, if it's you, I mean, the best preventative strategy we have is us being able to have a relationship with our child on a one-on-one conversation. We can't if everybody, including you, is looking down. Be careful. 66% of kids say we're the ones too plugged in. So maybe you start with, where are we having unplugged times? I would say the most important thing is don't let your kid go to bed with a cell phone. We're looking at sleep-deprived kids. In a few minutes, you're going to see how that's going to impact their sleep and raise their stress levels. You can also find the family room, or maybe the carpool when they're locked in and they can't get out is the perfect time to no cell phones allowed, or dinner. Maybe there's a box where everybody, including you and dad, put the box in, and nobody is online when we are at certain times. I think that's what we need to do. Just be very clear. And some other ideas. Our kids are saying, and rightly so, they haven't been exercising their social skills. We're seeing more social anxiety. Are you seeing it? We're seeing a little more little guys separation anxiety. Kids saying, I don't know how to connect with my peers like I used to. These are high performing, peak performing teens. So maybe the first thing is realizing the best way to teach skills is by showing them, not telling them. And it may be nothing more than you deliberately, parent, modeling it. Hello, hi, how are you? Just model it far more. Eye contact. If you could do one rule in your house, always look at the color of the talker's eyes. If you start that at age 2, you're going to help your child look more assertive. And that's a key to be able to say no. You want a good prevention skill? Your child is going to have to be able to say no to peer pressure. And one of the ways that really makes him look seriously and being taken seriously is just holding his head up and looking at the color of the talker's eyes or at the bridge of the other kid's nose. It's fascinating because your whole body now looks more assertive and you look more confident and you're more likely to be taken seriously. Encouragers, as you're playing chutes and ladders, as you're playing chess, make a rule that you encourage high five, good job, at least a couple of times during the game. It's called practice. You learn habits by practicing and exercising them, listening to one another or reframing before you get allowed to talk. What's one thing dad just said? Making an introduction. Hi, my name is. Not all at once, parent, but maybe each week or each month. What we're looking at is core empathy skills to help our kids learn to reconnect. And one of the things we do know about resilient kids, really and truly, is they have social competence. All the work on resilience says it. So set some unplugged times. Always look at the color of the talker's eyes. Talk more feelings. Ask, how would you feel? What do you need? Or what can you do? And just keep reading and reading and reading out loud to your kids or encourage them to keep reading. Not only does it boost focusing, not only do those books encourage and increase vocabulary, but they also help kids soothe and step into the shoes of the character. What's one thing you want to remember? We spent a lot of time on the first 2 because they're really foundation skills. Let's look at others because we also know that our children are desperately going to need self-control. Regardless of what the age of the child is, I think one of the highest correlations of resilience and best preventative strategies for healthy living and well-being is helping your kid learn to think straight and put the brakes on impulses. It's not something, parent, you can teach overnight. So please relax. You can't, but you can teach some strategies and some skills. So tune in, because of 1 in 3 American kids is suffering from a mental health disorder right now. And 77,000, listen up, 77,000 American pediatricians signed a form saying our kids' mental health is in dire emergency right now. Then we need to add this to the plate. If there's one thing every kid needs before they leave us, is the ability to know, I got this, mom. I know how to calm down. We're looking at diminished coping strategies as our kids leave us and go off to college. I mentioned this before, but I want to also say that one of the most kind of uplifting or distressing things I'm seeing is that many colleges now across the US, the first week crash course that you go to school, Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Rutgers, you're getting a crash course in resilience building because they say it's so crucial. It's so crucial for your kid to succeed in that school. And I say, why are we waiting until the kid is 18 and 19? We can teach these skills when our kids are 2, 3, and 4, and you keep layering and you keep adding them on. First, if there's one skill you want to do is look at your kid a little closer again, and that's what you write down. Each child has their own unique stress signs. I don't care if they're 2 and it might be their little feet move up and down, or their little hands are like this and fists, or they grind their teeth back and forth, or they're 17 and 18. Many of our kids are teens saying they're getting more headaches over the last year. They're breathing. They can feel it. They can feel it in their chest. You can see their rapid breathing or their stomach ache. A lot of times they're more sleep deprived, or they're starting to eat unhealthy as a result of it. Are you seeing irritability? Every single headmaster and principal of every school I've been working at, and it's hundreds right now, over the last 2 years has said the kids are more irritable, they're more stressed, and they're a little bit more angry and acting out than they used to be. Moodier. Are they clingier? Not all of those, but which one is your child? And it's going to be different for each kid. Maybe your 21-day strategy, because it takes about 21 days to form a new habit, is to start pointing out to your child that I notice that right before you go to do the time test or right before you, whatever it is, here's what you do. If a child, particularly a teen, knows the stress sign, could be emotional or could be physical, they're far more likely to then immediately put into place, here's what I'm going to do. Second thing, do you have a calm down corner or a calm down space in your home? If not, consider it, because you can have your child create this. This is not where you go for time out. This is where you go for time in. And I don't care if the child is 43, that would be dad, or 18 or 3. Looks like you're getting a little stressed. Why don't you go to? I love it when teens start doing this in their own bedrooms. And it could be nothing more than putting, what one kid said, a goldfish, because he loves to watch his goldfish. Natalie would say, it's my iPad loaded with Mozart. Some kids say it's books that I go into. What is it that your child needs or craves? Great Aunt Hattie maybe taught him knitting and he loves to knit. Makes no difference. But if you can help your child learn to put together what he needs, he'll use that same thing later on when he leaves you and goes off to college, just a calm down space. And it could be something, if you already have it, fine. But if you don't, maybe that's something you want to consider. Here's also, I think, the moment you sit up and listen carefully. Because if you have a teen son, sometimes when you say, why don't you take those slow, deep breaths, kind of goes over like a lead balloon. But if you say, here's what Navy SEALs do, you're going to get a little credibility. I've worked on 18 Army bases. I've trained mental health counselors, but while I was there, I was told by the commanders to go and talk to the most elite forces we have in the world, Navy SEALs. Ask them what they're now doing, because we have revamped their training to prepare them for adversity. I love that. Did you notice? To prepare them for adversity. That's the piece I think we're failing to do, to prepare our kid for the challenge that hits them along the way. And there will be challenges along the way. The first thing that they do is very similar to what we just talked about. The SEALs say we spend hours and hours figuring out what our stress signs are. We point them out to each other. So the moment the stress sign comes in, that we can feel it, we immediately use some kind of self-talk. We tell ourselves, breathe or calm down or just get on with it. You can do this. And then they say the single most important thing to teach kids is a 1-2 breath. While you're saying calm down, you take a 1-2 slow breath from your tummy, like you're riding up an elevator. Seriously, this is so critical, parents, to get this right. They've actually put SEALs into MRIs and watch their brain when they're doing this. They have rewired their brain because of repeated practice, and they will tell you it takes hours to get the breath right. But you take a slow, deep breath, like you're riding up an elevator, you hold it, you slowly let it out. Ideally, you keep focusing on the breath. Yes, your brain will go off, but you keep focusing until you finally can. The exhale is twice as long as the inhale. Take as many exhales and inhales as you can. Anytime. That is critical. That's what you do. Now practice it with your child, or you can do the same thing and you can say, take an ACT. And that is act to manage your emotion. It's actually the same thing that the SEALs are doing. A is assess your stress. C is take calm, slow breaths. And T is talk positively to yourself. Calm down. All right, got this. Parents, I think one of the things that teens are telling us we're doing wrong, and they're so good to tell us this, but they say, you got to give us a repertoire of stuff. We are the most stressed out generation, but you got to give us a lot of things that we can try. So when push comes to shove, we can do it. And then we got to practice it over and over and over and over so we can do it without you. I love that. How often is your child practicing managing emotions? It will take as long as it takes. Don't say, oh gosh, I tried that last week and it didn't work. You got to keep trying until it kicks in. Many parents are doing yoga groups with their daughters. Maybe that's what you want to try because it's the same policy. You can put apps on your phones for many of your teens that they can use it. Or I know some of you have younger kids, so you do belly breathing with a little guy. But this time, I love it that this teacher is using a beanbag on their tummy, because what she discovered is they don't get the exhale right. It's not slow, it's too fast. So they never get it. Instead, put the turtle on your tummy, slow down. Don't scare turtle. He needs a slow ride down. I was observing Jennifer Bell, absolute incredible teacher. Every day she does this right after lunch because she said that's when the kids are more irritable. Maybe you can do it at a certain time. The moment the kids come home from school is when they are most stressed, kids say. Maybe that's when you practice it. But 3 minutes later, the whole class was asleep. So number 3, what are you going to do to help your child learn? Please learn to manage that stress. There's lots of ideas. I want to take one moment to say the book that Nancy was talking about was Thrivers. This was a 3-year journey to research how do we boost resilience in kids. Every chapter is one of these 7 strengths, and every chapter also has dozens of grade-leveled, age-related ideas, because I want you to find one that works for your child. The book is in audio form, digital form, paperback. It's also in hardback on Amazon or any place. But my goal for you when you read that or you go through what we're talking about today is to not try them all, but try what your child needs and keep trying it until it becomes a habit. Here comes number 4, integrity. Peer pressure is huge. You know that. Who's the child who has the ability to say no to the peer pressure? Who's the ability of the child who say that's not a good choice? It's a child who has integrity. And here I think is the most important question for number 4. Pretend you're looking at your child 40 years from now. What are the character strengths you hope to see in your child? That's what character is. It's integrity. You're not born with that. And it doesn't make any difference what it is, parent. Respect, responsibility, accountability, trustworthiness. Let me share something with you, because when I was writing Thrivers, I was interviewing dozens of kids across the country. And I was in a Florida, upstate, very prestigious school, asking the high school teachers, who's a teen here that really demonstrates integrity? And they all said, Mia. Go interview her and find out how she got that way. So I pulled her aside and said, Mia, every teacher wants to know how you develop such integrity. She laughed and she said, it was how I was raised. I said, okay, Mia, fess up. How were you raised? Put this one down on number 4 because it's so simple. It reinforces every bit of science that there is on evidence that we make a difference and the best way to teach conscience into a child. And she said, okay, it was how my parents raised me, but it started when I was, I think I was 5. My parents called me and my 2 younger brothers into the family room. There was chart paper and marking pens all over the floor. You can do this weekend. My parents said, have a seat. We're going to brainstorm how we want to be remembered as a family. What's the most important thing we stand for? That alone, I thought, oh my gosh, what a fabulous question. And so Mia said, we started to brainstorm and mom wrote down all the words until pretty soon she ran out of paper and dad said, okay, now we vote. I said, what do you mean you vote? Well, whatever came with the most votes is what we chose to be. That was the family we want to be remembered for. So I said, okay, Mia, what'd you choose? She said, we chose honesty. That's what we chose. And so dad said, okay, we're now the Honest Duns because our last name was Duns. I said, gosh, Mia, that's amazing. How'd you remember it? Quote unquote, she laughed and said, it was impossible not to. My mother must have said it 50 times a day. It's repetition, parents. She dropped me off at school. Remember, we're Honest Duns. As we sit there and watch TV. Wow. Those guys are honest duns. Discipline. We did something wrong. Was that an honest done thing to do? She said it so much, we became it. What are you saying so much your kids become? The simplest thing, you want to teach integrity, go to chapter 4 in Thrivers, or just write down TEACH. Target what you want your kids to stand up to, become. What's the character traits? Be intentional about it. Be intentional. I worry because I think character is kind of going into a nosedive state these days. Talk about it. Second of all, show examples of it. Point out adults behaving well as opposed to badly. How about your own self? If your kid had only your behavior to watch each day, what would they be catching? It's a clear way to teach character is through example and modeling. Third is keep accentuating it, just like Mia Dunn's mom did. Were they honest Duns as you're reading Charlotte's Web, as you're talking about the news? Keep accentuating. Catching them in the act is one thing I think we're failing to do. Praise the kid for the character the moment they do it and use the word because again. That was being a person of honesty because, or that was being trustworthy because. Tell the child and keep highlighting why. And chances are your child will develop that and be able to say no to some of those things that we hope above all else they say no to. You can't unless you know what you stand for, integrity. And then comes curiosity. Notice it isn't one thing. You're beginning to see, I hope, that there's a lot of skills that are critical. Yeah, these are 7 traits, but each of these strengths are made up of skills. If there's one skill that I see a really resilient, bounce back, thriving kid has, is the ability to think out of the box. That is, they are problem solvers. And so from this moment on, parent, here's your sit up and listen moment. We are robbing our children of curiosity. For some of the things we're doing in our parenting styles, the overscheduling, the more play, the solitude, all the rewards and trophies, do you know that actually reduce our children's curiosity? Digital addiction, that's not boosting curiosity and openness and creativity. Or micromanaged, I'll do this for you, sweetie, or always stepping in and rescuing the child. Please, parent, make this be from this moment on your new rule. Never do for your child what your child can do for themselves. Never. Because each time you rob your child by rescuing them, you're actually robbing your child of resilience and curiosity. Your child has got to learn this thing called agency. I got this. Yeah, we're a test-driven GPA society. I know you want your kid to be able to get those good grades and be able to be successful, but they also need a balance. They need also to be able to key the kid who knows, I got this, mom. I know what to do differently and think outside the box. One of the things we're seeing as a new trend in our children is risk aversion. They're afraid to raise their hand, says Yale. They're afraid to get the B+, or maybe it's the mistake that's completely wrong. First, from this moment on, here's your simple little thing to try and do. There's a problem. And there will be problems because that's what life is all about in learning and life and social development and skills. But don't tell the child what to do. Instead, say, tell me what's bugging you. And Myrna Shore says, you can start this when your kids are 3 and 4. Just say what's bugging you. Okay, a poker face. Now, positives only, start brainstorming. Thank you for telling me. Let's think about what else you could have done next time, what else you can do instead. When kids know there's a next time, there's a possibility of something more. Oh my gosh, the window opens and now resilience starts to open up. Add on options. Dad can come up with an idea. Sister can come up with another one, or you can maybe just tally when the kid says, how long do I have to do this? Let's just set our timers for 1 minute. But the more you brainstorm with you, after a while, your child will be able to do it without you. And that's what you're trying to do. Keep storming. And then what's your plan B? What are you going to do next time? With little guys, you can role play. With big kids, it's, okay, so what are you going to do? What's it look like? That's critical. In your own home, we also know that our children, those risk-averse ones, some of our most peak performing kids, our teachers are saying, are afraid to disagree. Family meetings are a goldmine. Around the dinner hour are a goldmine. You want your child to be able to speak up. You want your child to be able to argue respectfully because you want your child to be able to state his view and defend it. But when he or she does, always say, please tell me what it is. That's the A. Now give me the reason. Give me the reason you believe it. But their E is, give me the evidence. What's your proof? With little kids, convince me. You can have a different possibility. You can have a different view than me, But you always need to stay, please, let's just be respectful. Let's just talk it through. We can debate. But it's critical that your child be able to defend himself with different views with you, because then he can do the same thing with peers. He can do the same thing out there in the real world. And it's an absolute essential skill for life. Just that thing called debate 101. Family meetings can be a wonderful option. Are you doing it? Remember, we are raising our children, our kids. All they have to do to find an answer is to ask Siri or go to Google and cut and paste it. We want kids to be deeper thinkers. Prove it. Give me more sources. Where are you coming up with that information? That's a deeper learner. And the ideas behind this, don't rescue. Never do for your child what your child can do for themselves. Start looking at your own behavior. You may be doing fine, but if you're always hovering or micromanaging, I know you don't want your child to be disappointed, but you also want your child to know, I can handle stress, Mom. I can do this in little teasing dosages along the way. Problem solving. There's no problem so great that can't be solved. I'm just going to storm my brain for another idea. For a little guy who has a different view from you, oh, convince me. What's your view? I want to hear where you're coming from. Constructive arguments are critical and they're key. And they're another trait of a resilient child who thrives. Is there one thing you want to remember? That would be number 5. You notice you don't throw all of that out. It's one little thing. And maybe it's, I'm going to look at my own behavior. Or maybe the one little thing on number 5 is, from this moment on, I won't rescue. I'll ask him to say the problem. And it may be 21 days of getting him to feel safe saying the problem because he's worried about your opinion of what his problem is. Be safe, be cool, be warm, be there. And as a result, you're going to have a child who's going to be more likely to thrive. One little thing, I know you're going to keep saying which of these traits is most important. My aha moment when I was writing Thrivers is to realize they all matter. It's a rare kid that has all 7, but you put any 2 together, it has a multiplier effect. Any 2, I don't care if it's optimism with empathy or self-control with integrity. What you have is a child who's far more likely to thrive and go the wrong yards because 2 strengths together are superpowers. 3 strengths together, oh my gosh, you've got absolutely a mind-boggling child who says, I got this, Mom. The single greatest correlation of a child who, to me, is a thriver is a child that says, I got this. I can do it. And that's what we're aiming for. So let's just aim for the last 2. We're almost there. You can see how they all add up. And this is the one that every parent in the United States of America and every place else in the world is saying, how do you get him to persevere? He's just not hanging in there as much as he was before. She's giving up faster. Why isn't she more motivated? And this is when the multiplier effect comes to be. Your superpower for perseverance is self-control, because self-control is the element that helps you focus. That's where you need to start your pushing. And then once he has that, there's a couple other science-backed pieces of research that we need to sit up and take note on. Because again, when I looked at the research on Thrivers, they're looking at thousands of children in different countries, in different settings to figure out what have they got going for them. And it isn't just the DNA. One of the things that a thriver has is a mindset that says, I have power over my own success. Too many of our kids are immediately looking at the grade, and they're not realizing that the effort you put into whatever it is, I don't care if it's your soccer or your art or your guitar or your science, the effort that you put in is the core element of whether or not you're really going to succeed on the end product. The big thing we do wrong, says K.N.O.W, thousands of kids were analyzed. The big thing we did wrong is our parenting. We kept focusing on what you get. How many did you get right? K.N.O.W says, reverse it. Start instead focusing on the child's effort. And maybe what we need to do is make success a gain. If you look at an Olympic athlete, The coach of an Olympian never says, get in there and get the medal starting at day one. They always track the child. No, yesterday you were at this many seconds. Today, let's go for 1 second more. It's a gain. That's what success is. It's a 4-letter word spelled gain. And if we can help your child so they don't get overwhelmed or feel like they're struggling or feel like they're hopeless, instead track where you are and where you're going now, you'll be able to make a difference. The other thing is we've got to be very clear on our expectations. We're so worried about, hey, this is where he should be because he's 17. Keep in mind that they missed 2 years of school. Hey, we're looking at preschoolers, and many of those preschoolers lost 2 years. 2 years of just growth in terms of emotional development, social emotional development. Those social emotional skills are core and they're a big part of thriving. So what we've got to do is always take the child where they are, stretch your child, but don't snap them. Snapping is when your expectations are too big, too long, and that's what overwhelms the child. Also, please make sure that your child knows that mistakes are things that everybody does, everybody makes, and that's part of life. But the key is to get back on the horse, keep on going. My favorite book for little guys is Fortunately, but the message is true for the teens as well. Good old Ned, he's 6. He gets invited to a birthday party. That's page 1. That's Fortunately. He's so excited with the birthday party invitation. But the next page is an unfortunate because you see, the party's in Florida and he lives in New York. But next page takes it into a fortunate. Oh, fortunately, a friend loaned him an airplane, but next page takes it into an unfortunate. But unfortunately, the plane exploded. But fortunately, somebody loaned him a parachute. But unfortunately, there was a hole in the parachute. The value is powerful. It's how you take your unfortunate and flip it into a fortunate. By the way, he finally ends up at the birthday party because he keeps figuring out how to take his unfortunates and turn them into a fortunate. And that's the whole goal. One of the most amazing centers I visited was MIT, Cambridge, MIT Media Lab. Geniuses that are absolutely over the top. When I spent the day there and interviewing the director of MIT, I said, how do you get Siri, artificial intelligence, driverless cars? He said, one part of it is curiosity. Another part of it is knowing what your strengths are. Notice all of these are coming together. But the third thing is mistakes are part of our structure. You got to make a mistake or you'll never be able to excel and be innovative. We make mistakes part of it. The key that kids say is watch how we respond to their mistakes, please, because they want desperately to get our approval. You could also each day make a little goal. What is it you want to work on today? When are you going to do it or how are you going to do it? Or just taking little goals, one little step at a time. It makes no difference what you do, parent, but goal setting, effort as opposed to what you get, learning from mistakes are the crux of helping children learn to persevere. And maybe we need to reframe where we're going so kids are more likely to succeed. What are you going to remember about number 6? Stretch, don't snap. Boost their agency. Praise the effort. And when a child says, I can't get it, Mom, you can't get it yet, sweetie. You're almost there. There's our new motto. There's our new mantra. And as a result, we're going to help our kids slowly with our new parenting style learn to shine. One more, hang in there, because this is the one that I think everybody in the world needs right now. It's optimism. A lot of times we think of this trait as all locked into DNA, when the reality is University of Penn has been tracking our children and teaching, particularly ones who are really pessimistic or always talking negatively or thinking, I can't, Mom, I just can't do it, how to reframe their thinking patterns, how to catch their pessimism. In fact, I think some of the most mind-boggling studies are now looking at 7-year-olds who are feeling helpless, 7, because they can't get everything right, or they're always thinking the negative. University of Pennsylvania is helping them with some of the skills we're talking about in this section right now. Curiosity and problem solving is core to optimism, but we also want to help our children not become Pollyannas. That's not where I'm going here, folks. You got to have a reality base. This has been a couple of tough years, but you need to also help them catch the pessimism so it doesn't become permanent, pervasive, or personal. When it does, it's highly correlated to boosting anxiety, and then depression, and then suicidology. This is essential stuff. And there's some simple little things we can do. The simplest thing is back to the Navy SEALs. Do you have a family mantra? Simply, this sounds like, oh my gosh, is this fluff? It sounds, touchy-feely kind of stuff. But in reality, what we now know is that if you don't stop and talk back to the worry or the fear, what happens is it becomes pervasive. The simplest thing you can do on number 7 is come up with a mantra yourself. Simply, if you did nothing more than, hey, we're strong together, or we got this, or we'll get through it. I don't care what it is, not all of those, but one. And you start saying that out loud, like a moment that you had a problem, or anytime your child has a problem, how you retort to the child. After a while, your voice becomes your child's inner voice. That's how powerful you can be. But it's repetition, and it's a lot of repetition, and it can help your child learn to counter the negativity. That's one idea. My goal here is to give you lots of ideas, not to try them all, but for you to try which one does your child or your family need. Here's another idea. Worries. Our kids are becoming very worrisome. If you're not seeing it in your child, I will tell you, it's a high correlation to other kids right now because they've faced a lot of fear. Uncertainty breeds this thing called worries. And so one of the reasons why we want to teach resilient strategies is because you can't change the world, but you can change how you control your response to the world. The big thing about this one is, please don't say you don't have to do it. Choose only safe ideas. But let me give you an example. Your child says, I'm scared to death of the water, Mom. I'm not taking swimming lessons. Will you say, okay, sweetie, you don't ever have to take swimming lessons? No. What you do instead is say, okay, then let's help you feel safe about the water. Today, just put your toe in. Remember, we did that. Next day, okay, now put your foot in. Next day, okay, you're getting better and better. You slowly chunk the worry into little dosages till your child feels like, I got this. That's exactly what you want to do. I'm so scared, Mom, I think I'm going to die. And that's what happened to many kids when I go outside because everybody's dying. This is a group of kids that every day they turned on TV, they were watching a daily death count. Yeah, that's a legitimate concern. So you counter it with a calmness and say, sweetie, today, let's open the window. Let's see how you do. Looks like you're fine. Looks like Mom's fine. Let's now open the door. Next day, let's take one step out. You slowly chunk fears and worries into smaller, manageable dosages, and your child begins to feel like, I got this. Another idea. I love this idea, but I think it's a really important one. Some new research just came out that families like yours who talk to your kids about not just your family, but your grandparents and great-grandparents and what they endured, like going through a Spanish flu, or great-grandpa was in World War I or World War II. When you talk about what they endured, what you're doing is painting a picture that you as a family are a resilient family. Oh, I love that. What they actually found is that the kids who are hearing the stories of we're a resilient family began to mirror it and say, I got this because we're strong together. And when your child says, gosh, we're never going to get through this, we're all going to die, you then show him the history. Well, sweetie, we're not the only ones that have gone through something like this wearing masks. Think about the people who had to go through the bubonic plague. You actually do a little history, and it's putting a crisis in perspective. You don't do this with all kids, but some kids are your science kids or your history kids. You can do this and saying, yeah, but when we grew up and your grandmother grew up, there was polio. They didn't have it. Look what happened. And now we're going to get through it. Give them that moment. One more moment. I swear the person that I missed the most during COVID was Fred Rogers. He raised my kids and he's not there anymore to raise yours. But I remember some things about him that now when I remember and recall It's actually the perfect way to build resilience. Anytime there was a crisis, the first thing this man would do would always talk about it. He didn't say, oh, they don't know anything about it. They do. Our kids are digital natives. They can figure out anything by instantly see some kind of a tragedy. And the tragedies they are seeing, folks, are impacting them. This is a population of kids not only have been seeing a daily death count every day. This is a population of kids who have also seen mass murders, school shootings, another one yesterday. We're looking at horrific kinds of images. And so what Fred Rogers would do was calmly talk about it and then tell the kids, just look for the helpers, like my mom said. Look for the helpers. And I mention this to you. It sounds so simplistic, but it's exactly what NYU says we need to do for our children. In a time of crisis, too often we see the bad stuff. We don't see the good stuff. And so what I would suggest you do is go through the news and find good news, good stuff, particularly good stuff that kids are doing. Let me give you an example of this, because they're calling elevating examples. When children see that other kids are doing something, it reduces their own fear and actually will help them spiral. I can do that too. Always use true stories. These are two kids in Ohio. You may have remembered them because they were really empathetic. They told their mom they were really worried about the lady. Oh my gosh, mom, she's so old. She's so old. She must be so lonely. She doesn't have anybody visiting her. Why don't we bring our cellos and dress up and do a cello concert on her porch? We'll social distance. That's exactly what they did. They were so excited to do it. And then she cried and they cried because they knew that they were making a difference on her life. Empathy is so powerful. But then mom sat and videoed it. All the neighbors came out and watched it and they cried. And then mom put it on Facebook. It went viral. And here's where the lesson on elevating examples come. And now kids all over the world saw it and they started doing the same thing. I can do a ukulele concert, or I can do a tuba concert, or what you're seeing is kids utilizing their strengths. Some kids, it was, I'll go and read to those little kids next door, or I'll go do some driveway drop-offs. Those kids are so lonely down the end of the street. I'm going to bake cookies and every day put something in the bag. And there were so many amazing examples of children who were doing wonderful things for each other. Optimism. Watch your footwork. Optimistic kids are kids who feel I can do it. Chunk worries into not rescuing them, but into smaller little dosages. Create a family mantra, maybe. That's ideas, or just a point that, hey, here's what we are as a family. Show good news. You can also paste those examples on cards. Some of you I know have kids who are in college. What one dad says, he's starting text chains. His kid is off in college. He says, oh gosh, is it too late for me? No, what we did as a family is every day we're doing text chains to each other wherever we are, and it's making a difference. You see, we've gone through 7 traits, but now we need to take 1 minute and look at the myths and break them. What I want you to know is that this is not another program. Please relax. This is a process, and it's a process of parenting. It's reimagining what our kids need to be good people, reimagining what they need to be strong people, and reimagining what they need in order to be preventative kinds of strategies so they do the good stuff. This is all teachable. It's all ongoing. It's not a set window, and there's multiple traits, not one, but it's always you, the caring adult who is there, strong and firm, loving and caring with the child. So my final wrap up to you is, of the 7, maybe put a star next to, that's the one idea I want to try. And of the 7, here's the star. Which is the key one that you want to remember to do, not just now, but start it later on tomorrow or the rest of the week or whatever, so that it helps your child be the best they can be. We've got this, parents. These are science on our side that's saying these strengths are ones that our kids aren't born with, but we can develop them. Each child is different. Each family is different. I gave you lots of ideas. Don't overwhelm yourself. Use this as a roadmap. If you need more information, then you can go to Thrivers and start looking at what did I overlook? Or is there another idea? Or, but my child is 3 or my child is 15. It makes no difference. Just be intentional and let's start, because when they graduate, I think what we want to be able to do above all else is say, that's the generation that we helped to be able to be thrivers. I'm going to turn this back over to you. I've got questions and answers, Nancy, anything you want. And Kathy, thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you, Michelle. All I can say is wow. I think all the information, I mean, you've almost answered every question here that's already on this question sheet that some of our participants sent in, but I will walk you through some of them so you can address them individually.
Okay.
But thank you so much for this wonderful presentation.
You're welcome.
Okay, so one of the questions we have here is, does being in advanced classes in the 8th grade really make a big difference long-term?
You know, what you need to do on that one is look at your child and say, does it help your child? Because very often it's not just the advanced class, it's the peer set. Is that who you're looking for? Is it stimulating your child? I think it's also a moment to be able to sit down with a parent, as a parent with a teacher, and say, how's he doing? For many kids, it stimulates the heck out of them. They work harder and they need it to become deeper thinkers. So that's what you're doing. You're looking at the long term. Does it stimulate? Does it help? Does it deepen the learning? Or is it making your child, what I'm seeing with some kids, become more failure paralyzed and worried about the grade as opposed to who they are? There's where you make this choice, because nobody knows your child better than you.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in ahead of time was, can we still mold an out of control teen?
Yes, I would say that, because if not, the entire counseling industry would go out of business. What you have to have, though, is a really good plan. The biggest thing I see is that you can be so discouraged with out of control with kids at that level. So what you need is somebody helping you sit down and say what's working and what's not working. Here's how to reframe it. And as a result, what you'll get is far more likely to get the gains you need. It's going to be a slow process, but I've seen more and more parents say, I'm so glad I did not give up, but this is what I needed to put my time and my energy into. And at one point, you really need to look at, do I need psychological, do I need to look at maybe some testing? Do I need to look at some counselors? The next thing you're seeing is that knowing that did not happen overnight, what works and what doesn't work. So I'd say, hey, yes, it works. Step 2 is, are you getting the help you need? And if not, start raising your hand and keep looking until you find the person who can relate to your child and give you the kind of information you need to be able to reduce the friction, to be able to restore the relationship and help that child learn the skills that he's going to need in order to process and keep on going.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know you spoke about all the different places you visited in the United States with the Navy SEALs, et cetera. And maybe you could just speak, Dr. Borba, to the trends that you're seeing in other places with young people in comparison. So the folks here in the Westchester County area, Putnam area, Connecticut area, can see what you're seeing across the country.
Well, thank you for the question. It varies obviously by county, by district, but the first thing I'm seeing is kind of a reimagining of education in schools. They're clearly seeing that social emotional development and skills are core and critical. But the other thing that I'm seeing is that they also realize that though they've taught them, they're not practicing them nearly enough so the kid can transfer it and use it out in the playground or getting out of the drinking fountain or on the bus. That is the biggest thing that I see is the aha moment. The second thing I'm seeing is many schools are embracing these 7 traits and thrivers. I've actually got pilot sites going that each month they're taking one of those traits and they're figuring out what's the one skill the kids need. And then they're doing it maybe like a 5-minute. Here's the best thing I've seen in Oakland schools. They're doing 5 minutes of quiet time. What they did is that they shaved off 30 seconds of each class period, a little bit more out of class lunch. What that now gives them is 5 minutes. What do they do it? The beginning of every school day, when the kids are coming in stressed, they turn down the lights, they put on soothing music. They've already taught them 1-2 breathing. And what they're all doing is the entire school at the same time is doing quiet time. Some you can choose to do what you want. Some kids meditate, the other kids do mindfulness, one kid reads, but one kid sleeps, but it's soothing. The most amazing thing they've discovered about that, because it's repetitive, it's not Monday, or once a week, it's every single day. They're seeing tremendous changes in behavior. They're seeing suspensions going down, attendance going up, but the most amazing thing they weren't prepared for is test scores going up. Remember, I told you that the core to perseverance is focusing ability. You focus, your perseverance will stretch. And now what they're also doing is parents are saying, what are you doing? Because there's a change in my child at home. I love schools. One more thing that I'm seeing that I think is the aha. We've got to connect the parents with the schools and connect the dots together so we all reinforce the same thing. What many of the schools are doing is putting on their websites, here's the skill we're working on this month. The coolest thing I saw one school do is have the kids video each other. So each kid has a flash drive. And what they then do is go home, and part of your homework is teach your parent. Now, the parent then does the 1-2 breathing at home with the kids. And I'm going, whoa, we're all out of tools at this point. We're stressed ourselves. Let's admit it. This has been really hard on us. We're worried about finances. We're worried about our kids' future, but we've got to keep ourselves calm. And I love that schools are reaching out and doing it that way. Kathy, the other thing I've saw that I absolutely think is the coolest thing ever is Thriver squads. They're kids who say, I want to be part of the squad. They meet once a week at lunch and they're making videos of why you should learn the skill. And then every morning they're showing the videos, and the kids, I've never seen more engaged kids. They're looking up at these videos. Who are they seeing? Their friends, their peers, and their peers are the ones that are teaching them the skills. And the kids who are also in the Thriver squad have a little bit of clout amongst the kids. They're not the student council kids. These are the kids with social confidence. And it's really paying off. It's working. There's no right or wrong, but I'm seeing some very innovative new strategies that are simple ways, not another program, because teachers are burnt out as well, but ways to weave this in to maximize change in kids.
Great, thank you. So keeping along those lines, because we've had a couple of questions come into the chat box, and looking at different organizations and weaving their ideas into their work, whether they're educators, et cetera. We had someone put in the chat box that, first of all, this webinar was so great.
Thank you.
She'd like to order the school, order the book for the school age staff. And did you do visits and small trainings for small nonprofits? And I'm going to give you the other question because it's all organizational based. Is can you share the name of the school that did the 5 minutes of quiet time at the start of the day?
Yeah. Let's start with that one because I'm going to forget. And Kathy, you're going to nail me on which questions that I didn't answer. All you need to do is go to quiet time and you will see a Google went up because schools all over the country are now doing the same thing. You will also get it evidence-based. And if you go to chapter 3 in Thrivers, what I did in this book was only put the evidence of the best things I'm seeing that don't cost another dime and aren't another program, but routinely are teaching resilient skills. The question I think was before, and if I miss it or I don't answer it, nail me. But the next question was trainings. Yes. One of the things that's also happening is that schools are doing book clubs and book talks. The fascinating thing is they're taking the book Thrivers and they're reading it as a staff. So each month they're reading one chapter. I'm also coming in and doing Zooms with schools. But the other thing I love is when parents in a parent group say, we'll do the same thing as a parent group. So we're talking the same language as the school. We got to get on board together. If you go to my website, which is michelleborba.com, it's very, very creative as a website, but you can remember it. Anyway, there is a book discussion guide for educators that's free. There's also a book discussion guide for parents that's free. You don't need to read Thrivers. Maybe you just have your first step is take the assets that you're going to get participants in your emails from this organization at the end of the speech and go back and look at the 21 skills And maybe your first question is, as a school, which one are we already teaching? Give yourself, gold star. Which ones do our kids need that we're missing? I think that's the piece that everybody has strengths and weaknesses. What we've got to do is be a little craftier and say, let's zero in. It's not all the stuff we teach the kids that matters. We're now teaching resilience habits that will last a lifetime. These are so core and critical that the Army is now teaching our Army soldiers before they go into battle. Thousands of guys are now being trained in these skills because they realize, let's keep the PTSD down. That's what we're doing. I think what we've done is we're doing too much intervention. And if we could reimagine our parenting and teaching as what can we do? Don't stop the intervention. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if we're now looking at a national emergency in mental health, what can we do to prevent this? Let's look at the science. Let's all band together. Let's all support each other, but let's look at maybe these traits and these skills that research and science says these are the ones that matter most.
Kathy and Dr. Borba, I think we have time for one more question. It looks like there's a good one, excuse me, in the Q&A.
Okay, in the Q&A, Dr. Borba, what is your opinion of tutors for higher level class versus no tutor and dropping to a lower level class? And also, what do I tell my child who asks for a tutor because many of his or her friends have tutors?
Well, the first thing is the key question, mom or dad who asked it, does the kid really legitimately need the tutor? That's number one. And the only way you're going to find that out is ask the teacher. Number two is realize you can save a lot of time and money by going to the high school, and there are now tutors, or a nearby college. You can use those kids instead of a pricier tutor. Number three is it could be the savior of saviors with your relationship with your child. One of the things I'm finding is that many parents are like, that homework battles are just unbelievable. Please know where your kid is at. We're seeing more and more kids who are actually kind of on quicksand here, and you can't keep pushing when you're sinking. So find out where they're at and what they need. And do they really need the tutor? Sometimes the tutor really is not the one that's going to push the child, but it's going to be there to support the child and give them one more, here's another idea you can use. In the bottom, it's going to be, does the kid need the tutor?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Borba, thank you so much. Kathy, did you have another question before we go?
I do. There's one here that says, Dr. Borba, what do we do when thrivers struggle?
That's what they're supposed to do. Let me give you this last final aha moment. Mm-hmm. I have been in schools all over the world, and some of them are the most peak performing schools. And I know they're very similar to yours that your kids are going to. This was in Taipei. This was an unbelievable high peak performing school. And I'm walking with this kid who's a junior in high school, who's giving me the tour. And I've already known that this kid's grades are in the ozone layer. He is on every council that there is known to man, but he also is warm. He's friendly. He's bubbly. And it was to the point where I finally turned to him and said, okay, why aren't you as stressed out as the rest of your peers who really were struggling? And I'll never forget this kid's comment because it's very similar to what Mia said. Quote unquote, he said and laughed, oh, that was how I was raised. I said, okay, how were you raised? He said, my parents knew that stress was going to be part of my life. So what they decided to do was give it to me in little baby steps so that they knew that I could handle it and I knew I could handle it. Thrivers are going to struggle, but they also need to know I can do it. I've got this. One of the things I'm seeing that as the deadliest thing is trying to coddle them because they've been disappointed, or coddle them because, oh my gosh, they've been through so much. Maybe this is our aha moment to say, where they are right now. Let's do the baby step model and slowly start proving to them, you got this, sweetie pie. You got this. There's going to be a little bit of a struggle, but if you take it to the expectation of where you are right this minute and just go one step more and one step more and one step more, I'm there for you. I'll never be not there for you, but I also know you can do it. That's the end product.
Dr. Borba and Kathy, thank you so much for helping with the Q&A. Dr. Borba, thank you for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. We want to thank everyone out there tonight who was here with us this evening, and those who will be watching if they registered and will be getting the video in the next couple of days. We are going to just real quickly put up, and bear with me for a sec while I do it. I'm going to just real quickly ask you to take a very quick survey. It's just literally 5 questions. It takes about a minute to do. If you turn on the camera on your phone and point it at the QR code, it will bring up that quick survey. These surveys take just a minute of your time, but they're so valuable and helpful for us because they help us know how we're doing with the content that we're bringing, what kinds of things you might like to see in the future. So we appreciate in advance you're taking a moment to do that for us. We also want to just let you know that our next webinar, which is coming up on December the 7th, also this same time via Zoom, is creating stability in a changing world, cultivating teen mental health. So again, building on these key strategies for resilience, thinking about how we cultivate teen mental health as we look into 2023 with Dr. Erin Weiner. So you can click on the QR code that's there or visit no2prevent.org to register. Again, Dr. Borba, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you all in December. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care, guys.